Welcome to the Robert Hunt Financial Market Update. It's your host, Robert Hunt, where I look at the week's financial news that can be a bit confusing, misleading, and take us off course and help to make it actionable, understandable, and clear. What a week, and therefore, what a show. You're going to want to bring the kids and grandkids in for this one because they may have something to teach us. We're going to follow up on our Vanguard letter saga. Bring you along for that shindig, that hopefully weekly update. I'm then going to look at artificial intelligence. How do I use it, if at all? How should you use it? How good is it really with personal finance questions? And we're going to dig into a couple topics: estate planning, and then the Roth versus regular contributions debate. And then I want to look at one of our favorites, as you know, Mr. Peter Mallouk. As we find ourselves hopefully in the shadow of some of this tariff turmoil, we look at some long-range data that I hope helps us all have a bigger view of what's happening, and we don't get ourselves into the muck and the mire of the weekly headlines. But let's start back with our beloved, my favorite custodian of assets, the Vanguard Group. I want to do a quick review. By way of review, Vanguard, did you know, listener, is a mutual fund company. What does that mean? It means there aren't shareholders in the traditional sense where profits would be distributed to them. The Vanguard Group is owned by the mutual funds themselves. What? It's kind of a weird thing. They call it a mutual fund company. I'd analogize it with a credit union, perhaps. It's run for the benefit of the membership. So it's supposed to run at cost. As such, it has taken a leadership role in reducing the cost for you and for me for our investment products. The industry calls this the Vanguard effect. This is the name. It's called the Vanguard effect, and it has forced Fidelity, Charles Schwab, and others to essentially match the low-cost products. Otherwise, all of the market share would be ceded to Vanguard. So many folks despise Vanguard for this. You and I should rejoice that such a company exists, and that Mr. Jack Bogle, who has passed away, his thesis from Princeton, I know I've got some Princeton listeners, you'll be proud to know that thesis was put to good use. He created this thesis as a student that, hey, maybe mutual funds could simply track an index and earn a superior return. It was named Bogle's Folly when it first came out, about 1976, because of all the experts saying how foolish it was to think that an index that just is static, simply picks the market and sits on its hands, would ever beat a professional in a suit and a tie, armed with analysts, etc. We now in 2025 know it wasn't Bogle's folly, it was the industry's folly. But back to why I'm a little addendum there on Vanguard. Back to why I'm writing Vanguard a letter. Vanguard is who I use as a custodian and whose exchange traded fund products I use. As you'll recall in previous episodes, for my weekly listeners, there was an absolute anomaly. I almost thought it was a glitch in the matrix based on dividend data. So we are seeking, as investors, not to be caught up in the moment-to-moment price action where the market goes up, down, and all around. We actually want to be focused on earnings, which in a sense gives birth to dividends. Dividends being the cash payments made from these various operating companies, pooled together in these indexes and then shot out to you, the investor. Well, in the first quarter of 2025, wouldn't you know it, the Vanguard S&P 500 fund, the dividend was up at an astounding rate. It just stupendous, something like 17%, whereas the total U.S. market was up, 8% on the dividend. That shouldn't be. They're almost the exact same index. So I get out my pen and paper. I write them a letter because they wouldn't, no one at Vanguard could answer the question. They said I'd write the mutual fund group a letter, and I haven't heard back. So how's that for a lead up for haven't been responded to based on the letter? But for you, the listener, just know, haven't given up. And oh, by the way, if you've read the parable of the persistent widow in the scriptures, that know that though that judge neither feared God nor cared about justice at the widow's insistence, he eventually gave her justice. So we, at the Robert Hunt Financial Market Update, we may just have to write quite a few letters and figure out why in the world would an almost identical indice have such a disparate dividend amount given? We care about the details here. And it's a good little history lesson on Vanguard on why you should probably either be at Vanguard or be very savvy and be at Schwab or Fidelity and find ways to navigate those ecosystems. I would say this is, if I'm going to advertise, and when the Texas State Securities Board came to my house and said, audited me, they do it for everybody who's an RIA, who's licensed under them. Is your podcast advertising? And I had to admit, and it's because of moments like this. I think it's one of the values I find myself adding to folks that otherwise they would get tripped up by is the gotchas, the trapdoors, bear traps. I'll call them like a peanut butter jar and a bear trap. And the customer who's not used to the tricks of these platforms will fall for them. I think Vanguard has the fewest traps. However, it does have traps. And goodness, how many, maybe I should give you a couple traps. Fidelity promises zero expense ratio funds. They still exist. It's called Fidelity Zero. They literally will charge you nothing. What's the trap? They're going to cross-sell you like crazy. It's the free buffet in the casino. So it's of course a loss leader for them. However, they know that you can't advertise lower than zero, even though Vanguard does have some funds lower than zero. Whew, kind of amazing. Can't advertise it. Securities and Exchange Commission won't let you. But because Vanguard actually will take some of the securities, lend them out, remit the profits at the fund level, not the corporate level, that means you benefit. So anyway, that's Fidelity's got a gotcha. Schwab's big gotcha is the cash that you hold, the default cash. So if you were paid a dividend in Schwab, wouldn't you know it? That money is held at interest. It's paying almost zero. Whereas at Vanguard, the default interest is 4.3%. Pretty big. I think Fidelity's default cash is better as well. So that's where Schwab seeks to make money because they don't charge for trades. No one charges for trades anymore. They certainly used to. That used to be a profit center, no longer. But that's how Schwab, that's one of their trapdoors. I mean, Schwab has a direct indexing trapdoor. Schwab will push more products. Fidelity will push more products, and Vanguard has started. So that's where it can help to have a guide, someone who can just, and I've done this before where, I'm on the phone with a client and a Fidelity rep, and the Fidelity rep is selling. I mean, I've been on the phone where the Fidelity rep just bad-mouthed low-cost index funds. It took everything within me not to just shout them down or start laughing. But at the end of the call, just circle back with the client and said, okay, well, don't worry. None of that stuff they said was true. They're just doing their job. They're just being told to sell. So still grateful for those platforms. If any listener works there, still grateful for everyone as a force for good. You just got to be wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove. Let's talk artificial intelligence. This is something I've been wanting to get back with you on. I was actually talking to my mother, one of our favorite listeners here on the podcast, most faithful. She was telling me she regularly uses ChatGPT. Hope she doesn't mind me sharing that with the listener base. I thought, fantastic, wonderful, how forward-thinking you are. But it also got me thinking, wow, this is way more pervasive than even I anticipated. And I've been using artificial intelligence, and I started using it related to personal finance early. So when ChatGPT first came out, I thought, is this my replacement? Am I looking at the future of financial advice, artificial intelligence? And I just ran it through a couple of tests. I gave it some of the basic stuff, like, hey, look, is low cost indexing work, or is it better than a high cost product? And it actually wasn't that great. You could kind of steer it, but the manner in which you asked the question would give you kind of goofy results. Well, I'm here to report May of 2025, the artificial intelligence engines, and the ones I've tested this week were Grok 3 by XAI, and then Gemini's 2.5 Pro and 2.5 Flash. And I didn't even check ChatGPT. They weren't just good; they were scary good. So I think we are entering an age where we can begin to trust these artificial intelligence engines to actually give us good answers. Now, I'm glad they do this. In the beginning, they would do this thing called hallucinate, where they could just make up these crazy answers. They would sound very authoritative, and it was actually pretty dangerous. And I would warn people, hey, don't do this stuff. Just wait on it. Today, I would tell you, try it. If you're perplexed with a financial question, as long as you give these engines the proper data. And I did this. So I tested it with a common question. You may have it today. Do I contribute, Robert, to my Roth IRA or my traditional IRA? Or do I contribute to my Roth 401k or traditional 401k? The difference being the traditional 401k, you get that tax deduction on the front end. The money compounds, but when it's pulled out, it's ordinary income. Whereas with the Roth, it's those post-tax dollars with the money compounding tax-free, and then on the withdrawal, it's tax-free. But it's a tough question for the engines because they actually need good data from you about your income and future earnings. And I find the question to be, in many cases, a split decision. I could go either way. It's tough to handle. I'm betting on future tax rates. Well, I fed this to Gemini this week, and I felt like the engine just nailed it. And even nailed where my data was insufficient on the question. I gave it further clarifying data, and boom. And now when I say nailed it agreed with me. So, of course, I think it's right, but it really was right. I then thought, you know what? Why don't I try it on a really complex estate planning question? So I ran it through the paces on a vehicle called a Spousal Lifetime Access Trust, a SLAT, which is it's a tool people are using with when the estate tax cliff hits, it's perceived it'll hit. It's a way to shield assets, protect assets. It's a grantor trust, which means it's a unique type of trust that the AI would have to understand how it worked, how the income flows to your tax return, and the implications there. So I fed it this long, kind of meandering scenario that I thought, no way. It nailed it. It got it right. And of course I'm thinking, okay, I need to, of course, I'm a little less confident on estate planning because I thought, gosh, I would just hate for this thing to be wrong. So I shot it to the estate planning expert, the foremost attorney in Dallas, Nelson Hunt. He actually thought it was right. Whoa. I thought, whoa. So I think we're in a new age here. I don't mean to sound hyperbolic, but I would now characterize AI agents as very helpful tools. I still would say measure twice, cut once. I mean, if you have something, you ask the agent, whether Gemini or Grok or ChatGPT, you ask a question and you still aren't confident, ask a professional. But I think it's also a great way to test a professional. If you go into a physician, I would use these tools as well. Advisors like myself and physicians, we have gaps in our knowledge, and these AI agents can really help equip you to come in with just great intellect, data. You're going to know what to look for and not look for. So I approve, and I'd be curious how you guys use these things. So if you give them a use, let me know, good or bad. But I like them. I think, will it replace me? That's probably what you're thinking. Will it replace me? I think it's possible it will replace advisors that don't adapt. I think it's if you just see yourself as an answer engine, yes, there's a better answer engine out there. If you see yourself as a thought partner, guide, counselor, networker, that's a little harder for it. But ultimately, anything's possible. But very exciting technology front. And then I wanted Mr. Maluk had an excellent. This is out of his book, Money Simplified. It's a wonderful coffee table book. He referenced a study. So there's volatility with these tariffs. I'm hearing it more and more. Oh, what do I do? Accounts down, no fun. Check this out. There's a study done. It shows that people who look at their investment statements every month have an allocation of about 41% in stocks and the rest in bonds. People who review their investments just once per year have about 70% in stocks and 30% in bonds. Whoa. Maluk says is because these groups have wildly different goals. Nope. People who look at their investments all the time get caught up in day-to-day financial narratives. Wow. Isn't that wild? So I'll say it again. If you look at your statements annually, you're able to take more risk. Investors who look at their statements monthly tend to be far more defensive and are more likely to underperform, according to Mr. Maluk. Now, Mr. Maluk, I wish he would have. I'm in his book right now. Maybe he cites this study in the back of the book. I actually don't see the study cited on this page, but this is Let Logic Prevails, what he says. But what a challenge to us. Now, I'll confess, I look at it all the time. In fact, when I'm on the call with a client, sometimes I'll be looking at weekly returns or monthly returns, either to encourage the client or help them understand something. So maybe perhaps that's just part of the world I'm in. But boy, can't we see how that's the truth? The less we look at it, the better. Bogle, who I referenced earlier, he encouraged people, this is back in the day, when Vanguard mails you a return statement, he said to trash it. Don't even look at the annual return statement. That's how dogmatic, I'll almost say puritanical Bogle was about not checking your performance data. Don't do it. So a good reminder for all of us. And then Maluk, and this is about just staying in the game, which I find important in these tariff times. He says the longer you're in the stock market game, the more likely you are to win. Now, he's going to reference U.S. stocks. This is 1901 to 2022, rolling monthly returns. So these are the percentage of years U.S. stocks, this is defined by the Dow Jones Industrial, posted positive returns over rolling periods. So again, percentage of years the U.S. stocks posted positive returns over rolling periods. 1 year. The 1 year, there's about a 73% chance you were positive return. 3 years, 86% chance. 5 years, there was almost a 93% chance you had a positive return. 10 years, 97%, and 15 years, 99.9% that you would have a positive. So that just tells you, wow, the longer you're in the game, the better. The longer. He says the longer you gamble in a casino, the more likely you have a negative return. Different games. Make sure you're playing the right games. I couldn't agree more. We got to make sure we're playing the right game. And I'll close with a story. One of my favorite listeners, they know who they are. They ran into me at church and they were like, man, the message, you got to be feeling great. The message in these calamitous, supposedly, investing times that you've been preaching, this John the Baptist message of cost low investing, simple time horizon long, dogmatic, stark as it may be at times. Hey, it worked, right? And I thought, it kind of did. I don't always feel that way. I don't always believe that. Oftentimes I too am in need of my own sermon. Wouldn't you know it? A pastor needs to hear his own sermon. So I was encouraged by that, and I thought, the slogan works, and it especially works when the market's choppy because we're keeping our costs low, our investing simple, and our time horizon long, knowing that is what's going to give us the best shot on our investing journey. Until next week.